Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. Someone I wanted to have on the show for the last few weeks from COVID and scheduling, but we're very glad to have the highest-ranking African-American male in Missouri State Government, Senator Brian Williams. Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Hey, Scott, it's always great to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
I think, like most people that follow state government, your someone's been on a lot of people's mind the last few months. The protest and the civil unrest after the murder of George Floyd's been on. If it hasn't been on your mind, there's something wrong with you. I wanted to ask you, I've wondered this question many times, I want to ask you here on the air. As you watched that video where that man was murdered and the whole world could see the video, what was going through your mind when you saw that?
Well, Scott, it was quite a bit of emotion. To think that I never thought in recent time I would see a man literally die in front of my eyes on television. I think it's a gut check to our country.
Yeah.
I think it's a gut check to the world. It's been something that's been very emotional and draining for the black community. As the only black male in the Missouri Senate, it really has put me in a mindset where I wonder, what can I do? I felt helpless in so many ways. As someone who has taken great pride in being a voice, not only for the state of Missouri, but the black community. So it's very challenging times right now.
So everybody hears about St. Louis and Kansas City even to a certain extent as well, and the folks that protest and have marched. In your position in state government, you've been asked to go, I've seen photos of you all around the state. Folks have requested that you come and speak and march with them and protest with them. You hear about St. Louis. What's things like in other parts of the state, out on the streets, where people have decided, maybe for the first time that people can remember, to begin to protest some of the issues that came out of that murder?
You know, as a kid that grew up in Ferguson, Missouri, I didn't see many people that didn't look like me.
Yeah.
And to go to Springfield, Missouri, in different parts of the state and attend groups and talk with members of various communities, it was inspiring. I mean, mostly white people. And they want to figure out how they can make a difference, and it matters. And I'm energized and extremely inspired by it.
So I would think that a lot of folks come to you and they'll start off expressing their feelings, but at some point you're in this unique position where you have to, people are going to look to you to create policies that might stop these things from happening in Missouri, or other people that have stories. A lot of folks I know have come to me and told me stories, nothing like the George Floyd story, but have stories where they've had interactions with police that haven't been good. I'm sure you hear those stories yourself. You probably have some. Where do you go to start creating policy? I mean, you're in this situation that's almost impossible, where you have to start trying to craft a policy that might help these situations.
Well, as we know, Republican or Democrat, working in the Missouri legislature is a very fulfilling and great job, but it's difficult. You have to figure out how to convince so many different leaders from various backgrounds that may or may not have a connection to issues that we focus on. So I think just informing and educating not only my colleagues, but various people throughout the state and the community on the challenges that impact the black community. The worst thing that we can do in any instance is pretend or assume the way that someone feels around this issue is not valid. So listening and being receptive to folks who may not understand the challenges of black communities, and also understanding that there are things that I've experienced personally and people of color that is not always fair, it's not always just, and it's something that we need to do about it. So I'm hoping to have that conversation with my colleagues and hopefully work towards getting some constructive policy to where black people in this state feel safe.
When you start to look at those policies, what are the types of things, and when could people start to maybe look to you to start coming up with some policies they could get behind?
Well, from the day that I was elected to the Missouri Senate, I've always worked hard to make Missouri a better place. And that includes making the black community stronger, allow us to have opportunities to be able to achieve goals and reach heights as our white counterparts. And that's something I will remain committed to. So it wasn't, I guess, about George Floyd dying that set my moral compass on who I should be as a leader, but I do think that it's heightened it, and it reminded me that I made a promise to my district or my state to be a leader and for everyone. And with this issue, I'm ready to just work and figure out ways that we could champion some issues to where we have a equal and fair system.
You know, to me, just as a person that sits up in the popcorn gallery and watches you in the Senate, you almost have an impossible task, because for you to be able to craft some policies that could turn into state law and actually be constructive changes to some of these issues, you're going to have to get them through a Missouri Senate that's every bit as conservative as, say, the Board of Aldermen is liberal. It would be like a Republican getting elected to the Board of Aldermen and trying to pass a tax cut. It's just, these are going to be, whatever you produce is going to be almost an impossibility, because you're having to go up into a Senate that is very conservative and pull these things. I think from the outside looking, it's almost going to have to be on your personal relationships to get that done.
100%. Relationships are everything, and I'm grateful and proud of the relationships I've been able to build in the Missouri Senate and beyond. It's going to be an all hands on deck approach. Yep. We're going to be incumbent on local government throughout the entire state to work hand in hand with the legislature to find policies that allow our communities to not only feel safe, but to not allow what happened to George Floyd go in vain.
It's been interesting to me, a couple parallels at the same time. I've seen Governor Parson's response to COVID has been to largely let local entities kind of manage the crisis on a local level. I've watched folks in St. Louis County, some conservatives, be very upset that, you know, they've elected a Democrat county executive for my entire lifetime that I can think of, going back to Westfall, that they've instituted policies pretty aggressive to deal with COVID. Seems justified, but you have conservatives here that are angry about that. They want a different response. Yeah. I look at the African American community as a percentage of the state. A lot of people have had experiences that they want addressed. There's going to be bills in the Senate that will address next year, whether they pass, I don't know, that will address what a local entity can do on shutdowns to answer the large amount of St. Louis Countyans who want less control, less restrictive shutdowns in reaction to COVID. There's people that whether they're a majority or not in this state, there's a lot of Missourians who have concerns that they want to see addressed.
Well, I can tell you this, when it comes to COVID, I mean, my district is one of the hot spots. So there's a large number of cases that have impacted primarily poverty-stricken communities that don't necessarily have access to healthcare resources.
Just like there's maybe a conservative in St. Louis County that doesn't want their ability to go to the gym restricted, there's African Americans that feel like their rights are restricted by the government. And while they may not be the majority of the state, there's a lot of people. And I think it becomes at some point in the self-interest of the state, because I'm from the Boot Heel. I'm just a simple West Brother County hillbilly. But a lot of Highway 67 was built with tax dollars from St. Louis. If St. Louis doesn't find a way to move past some of the racial issues and address them, the rest of the state can't succeed.
Yeah, if St. Louis doesn't do well, the entire state of Missouri fails. I truly believe that.
It's just the math.
And it's simple math. But I can tell you right now, our country has been revealed for its shortcomings and insecurities and failures through this pandemic, whether it's racial injustice, whether it's a weak healthcare system when it comes to ensuring that everyone has access, or the fact that we have a population that's just completely ill-informed when it comes to understanding how to go about a virus of this magnitude, because we've never seen it before. But I can tell you right now, I think the steps that we've taken by allowing our healthcare systems to be able to rebound and not have to worry about being, flooded with patients because of COVID-19. I think it's allowed our economy to have an opportunity to rebound. And had that not happened, I would be very concerned about the future of Missouri as well as St. Louis. On the other side of that, I do respect the fact that folks want to be able to do things and live their everyday lives. But, I have a 90-year-old grandfather I haven't seen in 4 months. And it doesn't make me feel good that I can't see my grandparents. But I can tell you right now, to know that if they were to go out and potentially be exposed to this virus, they would die, is a serious reality check, and I think we need to take it serious.
So last question, I asked Frank White this. I get the sense after the video, watching it as everybody has now, there's some folks that may be open to looking at different types of policing, not defunding the police, but they have a different view of the world maybe some suspicions were confirmed that they had prior to seeing that video. What is something that a person can do that maybe his mind is being opened up, that these issues need to be addressed? What is something they could actually do to maybe try to make it a little more equitable world?
Well, you got to do the first thing I did when I saw that video. I took off this state senator lapel pin, and I understood that what happened to George Floyd could easily happen to Brian Williams.
Yeah.
And me being State Senator Brian Williams is no exception. And I think sometimes we get so consumed into our success and sometimes privileges, especially as white people. And that privilege is not always afforded. And I think we have to take a step back and understand that there is a population of people who are judged and perceived a certain way because of the color of their skin. And it's not right, and it needs to stop. I would say, as I said earlier, inform ourselves. I learned so much about Missouri. I can tell you right now, I had no clue what a CAFO was before I became a state senator. But I do now because I care about what happens.
Wonderful thing that contributes to all of our lives.
Well, I tell you what, I would hate to live next door to one. But because of my experiences as a state senator, I became well equipped to represent the entire state of Missouri. And I don't think that any other resident or any other leader should be exempt from that. And I think it's time that we take a serious look at the challenges and the injustices in the Black community when it comes around systemic racism, policing, and beyond, and really work together to move forward. And I think we can do it.
Senator Williams, thank you for joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me. It's always great to be here with you.
We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Representative Tom Hannegan joins us. But first, go to showmissouri.com. We look at the whole state, a lot of places where those wonderful CAFOs are. We'll be right back after this.
Mike Parson served in law enforcement for 22 years. A former sheriff, Parson is tough on crime. Governor Parson is standing up for victims, investing in better mental health services, and cracking down on violent crime and drugs. Governor Parson's anti-crime initiatives have led to the arrests of hundreds of violent criminals and gang members. A former sheriff, a conservative, tough on crime governor. Mike Parson is making Missouri families safer.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back this week in Missouri Politics. Opinion maker panel time. Chris Voss, first time on the show, Missouri Liberty Alliance. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Surrounded by authors. War on Police author Jeff Roorda, Cobb, CNN personality. Welcome back, sir.
Glad to be here.
And Eric Bohl, the Missouri Farm Bureau, author of Fractured Republic. I did not know about this one. Everybody knows about this one. I didn't know about this one.
Well, hopefully everyone will know about it soon.
Absolutely. And Representative Tom Hannegan from St. Charles. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Good to see you.
Jeff, let's start with you. We just had Brian Williams on. We talked about the African-American community in policing. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say there's been friction there, has been for a long time. You see people that talk about defund the police. Well, in St. Louis County and City, in the last 3 years, they voted for huge tax increases just for the cops. It's kind of the difference between like Twitter and real life. In Twitter, you'd think the cops, everybody in St. Louis hates the cops. When they go vote in real life, they apparently like them. Defunding the police isn't real, but are there some things that could happen structurally to help police and their interaction with the African American community?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, we're missing an opportunity to talk about real ways to make progress. First of all, let's not let the media get away with saying that the 10 cop-hating activists, most of whom are not African American, speak for the entire African American community. I get so tired of this repeated trope that these loudmouths, this small group of loudmouths who are full of hate, speak for the entire African American community. As you said, every single community or neighborhood in North St. Louis, every ward in North St. Louis voted for Prop P. Some of them by overwhelming amounts. You can kind of compare how bad the crime is to how well we did there. So the police want us in the community. Defund the police is real. Let's not write it off. This is what the anarchists that are behind a lot of these protests want. They want lawlessness. They don't want police. They don't want law. They don't want order.
You're one of you're the most outspoken person in Missouri advocating for police. I've not heard any officers condone what happened to George Floyd.
No, George Floyd should be alive today. It's a failure of police training. It's a failure of police tactics.
And it's a person that broke the law, right?
Right. Well, I mean, any of these situations that have been high profile, you have to remember that we're dealing with a criminal. George Floyd, if he would have lived, would have been facing federal charges for counterfeiting and would be in a jail cell right now. But that doesn't make it all right that he's dead. We take those situations, we try to figure out what went wrong. We haven't used a chokehold in St. Louis in 13 years.
It is the difference in the PR and reality. Representative Hannegan, though, as people are going to start talking about policies that stop this, I think there's a lot of people that probably live in your district that maybe they were a little skeptical, that had to be aghast at watching that video of George Floyd.
Oh, I think everybody is. I mean, it was very disturbing. We saw a man die in front of your own eyes. It was heartbreaking. I think one of the big things is I'm not for defunding the police department at all. We need the police department. One thing that I noticed that can come out of it is more discussion. And I definitely think the police need to be involved in those discussions, though. It needs to be the community. It needs to be a lot of people. I'll give you an example in St. Charles with the LGBT community, for example. We have a problem with black transgender women that were having hate crimes, that were being killed.
In St. Charles?
Well, in a lot of the area throughout the United States. Not United States, Missouri, I apologize.
Sure.
So basically, the St. Charles Police Department took it upon themselves to bring in a police officer that would handle hate crimes, that would be more friendly to LGBT issues, and that's what I think. So you're going to see a lot of diversity programs, and they're in their starting stages, but that's a step. And I think because the LGBT community came together and said, hey, we have a problem. How are you going to treat hate crimes? What are you going to do for these transgender women that are being killed? And so that conversation with police involvement helps make those baby steps into determining how we can better ourselves.
Chris Voss, Missouri Liberty. When I think of liberty, I think a lot of it is, look, I'm a simple white trash hillbilly from the boot heel. I've seen folks in my community that have had bad interactions with the cops. Liberty should be for everybody, right?
Yeah, and I think when you look at police, they're human beings, and in every profession, every field, you're going to have people who make mistakes or bad actors, but that's not indicative of the whole profession. And I think that a lot of people are putting their lives on the line to serve their community. And we need to take a look over the past few weeks. There are hundreds of police officers across this country who are under attack, injured. Yeah. And we need to start talking about that as well. There needs to be reform, but we also need to stand behind our men and women in blue.
Eric Bohl, I think that's an interesting concept. I mean, where we're from, it's been pretty much the response to protests in the past has been back the blue, and that's pretty much the end of it. Senator Williams talked about coming forward with some proposals, but it's going to be as hard as passing a pro-life bill through the Board of Aldermen. It's going to be a challenge in the Missouri Senate.
It sure is, and you've seen that already on the federal level with the bill introduced by Senator Scott from South Carolina that was dead on arrival with the Democrats, and they filibustered it to even kill it. And you saw Speaker Pelosi then, I think, made a despicable comment about that action, where she said that they were allowing the murder to go by without any response of George Floyd. And I think that's just awful to be that at each other's throats over something that we really could come together on. But I think that you'll see some of that in the state capitol too. I think the closer you get to the local people, the more likely we are to actually see reforms or changes to make
Sort
some
of like
differences.
St. Charles, right?
That's right, yeah. And like Jeff was saying, I think that we'll have people in local police departments that make their changes to policies about chokeholds or whatever, where St. Louis has done that years ago. You may see that on the local levels and really see the change happen there rather than by politicians in Jeff City or in Washington, D.C.
Talk about a place where the change did not come from a state capital of Missouri, came from the U.S. Supreme Court. They passed a third of Mona. Break down exactly what happened.
Great. Yes, thank you for bringing this up. So Mona, Missouri Non-Discrimination Act that we've been trying to do here in Jeff City for like the last 20 some odd years. Well, we had a big win, huge for the LGBT community, with the Supreme Court 6-3 vote said that you cannot discriminate against sexual orientation and sexual identification in employment. Now, that's great and that's a huge step forward, but they're still leaving out a couple pieces that Mona would cover, and that's the housing situation and public accommodations. So basically, we're hoping right now that this is a great way to start the conversation, maybe help some of the Republicans that were kind of on the fence about this. You see Trump's appointment, a Republican justice who wrote the opinion. Basically, it was a 6-3 vote. Maybe that will help give some cover to some Republicans that might have been on the fence about this issue that might be like, hey, we have the cover now to maybe support it. So I'm hoping that it has a domino effect and that we can go forward with Mona to include the housing and public accommodation issue because we have the great win of having the employment. The great also thing about the order that the judge did was it was very clear. There's no Mickey Mouse hidden language in there, and so it's going to be a very hopefully easy way to expand into these other topics.
So in the news, I thought of you, I thought of Representative Razor from Kansas City, and I thought of Kevin Engler from Farmington.
Yeah.
Stood up on these issues many times.
And we're excited. We might actually have another openly gay gentleman in the Republican Party coming in our ranks. So that's exciting news for us. So times are changing.
Chris Voss, when I hear these issues talked about, I think of your organization. It's been very active in the courts, kind of saying these decisions should probably be made at the legislative level.
Yeah, so I think when you talk about Mona, I think that, the legislature, if they want to pass these laws, that's kind of where it should be happening. I don't think that, our court system and the Supreme Court should be, legislating. And I think, we're seeing across the country, people are happy about the end result of this case. But, I think a lot of people are also saying that probably should have been passed by the Congress instead of waiting for the court to weigh in.
Jeff Roorda, you and your guys are on the streets in St. Louis City every day. The largest amount of COVID cases around is in the St. Louis area. What is the status right now of St. Louis at reopening or having to take a step back because of the cases?
I think it's kind of in flux right now. I mean, this
Do you
has
feel
been
safe for your guys on the street right now?
No, by the way, COVID is more deadly for police officers than it is for any other profession.
Wow.
People, in the last few months, people have been raining ticker tape and rose petals on healthcare workers' heads while they've been throwing Molotov cocktails and bricks at my guys. But I mean, it's 9 times more deadly for police officers. I mean, we've had 121 police officers die, 296 healthcare workers. There's about 20 times more of them than there are us, and we're on the front line in a very dangerous way because we don't know who we're dealing with.
It is true that people do not, when they talk about first responders, it seems like it's more focused on healthcare workers than cops.
Yeah.
Eric Bohl, in rural Missouri, where you spend a lot of your time, a pandemic never hit most of rural Missouri.
Well, that's true in some places. We did a survey just a couple weeks ago to see what people's response is to the pandemic, and most farmers take it pretty seriously on a personal level, but it also didn't affect their day-to-day. It sure did affect their livelihood, though, especially on the livestock side.
Absolutely.
It really drove prices down and backed up the supply chain going into the processing facilities. Plus, you've seen McDonald County down in southwest Missouri is the number 2 county in the nation right now as far as a hotspot, and that's partially because of there being several poultry processing facilities there. So we have some issues we need to take care of in rural Missouri too.
Governor said we're going to have a state fair. Chris Voss, he didn't say he's going to have the governor's ham breakfast, a great tradition in the state. We're going to have a ham breakfast this year in Sedalia?
I sure hope so. The ham breakfast, that's kind of where Liberty Alliance was launched and started last year. So it's near and dear to my heart, and certainly hope that, the event goes on.
You know, Mike Parson, we're going to have a ham breakfast this year. We're going to surrender to China, that too.
First of all, I don't know why you want to bring all those city slickers down to Sedalia to infect those poor folks.
Too many of y'all down there.
Pettis County.
We're going to have a ham breakfast?
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes.
I think that might be the case. So politics, Chris, looking at the governor's race, to me, I think Republican starts off well in this state. What does Trump need to do to probably make that not a competitive race? 10, 11, 12?
Yeah, I think if Trump wins by 12 points, Galloway doesn't have a chance.
Jeff Roorda, you've counted these votes a long time. Where does Biden need to get to? He doesn't have to win probably to make this competitive, but he's got to get 5, 6 maybe?
Yeah, I mean, Biden being at the top of the ticket
Losing by 5, 6.
Yeah, Biden being at the top of the ticket is really good for Nicole.
Save the race, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's not a
makes
race
it competitive.
if it was Sanders.
If
this
they
isn't
would
a
have
race.
picked some left-wing lunatic, the race would be over before it started. But I mean, he's got to decide that he wants to be pro-police. He's always been pro-police, and now he's starting to
quick on
vacillate.
defunding the police.
Yeah.
I thought that was smart.
Yeah.
What needs to happen here? Does Biden lose by 5, 6, and it becomes a race? What's that number at?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard in Missouri to get under double digits for Biden. But if he does, then Galloway may have a chance. She's a really nice lady that's done a nice job in an auditor's position. But other than that, I don't think that she's, without that narrowing in the presidential race, I don't think she's going to be able to get close to Parson.
So, I mean, you win a district that is becoming more Democratic.
Yes.
While Jefferson County's Republican more and more, St. Charles City is a place that's going to be more Democrat. You've won swing elections. Where is Trump at right now?
You know, I think that there's definitely there's a movement in my neck of the woods for a Democrat, candidates to come out there. I know I'm a targeted area because of a lot of people from North County are moving into the St. Charles area, and so there is that change. Now, the further you go in the county St. Charles, it's still pretty solid Republican, but definitely there's a movement, and I think we have to be aware of that, and people will be watching what Trump does and says and tweets.
Sure. Chris Voss with a minute left, 2 on the week.
Senator Tony Luetkemeyer over from Platte County. He is really working hard on his crime bill. There's a lot of fringe groups that are trying to kill that bill, and he got a bunch of endorsements this week, sheriffs, prosecutors, police, so he's definitely won the week.
Who won the week?
Donald Trump invited my 4 police officers who got shot during the riots in St. Louis to the White House for the 4th of July. If he makes this election about defend the police versus defund the police, he wins.
Very few candidates have ever lost on law and order in America.
Right.
Who won the week?
I'd say Missouri farmers won the Roundup case in California, make it so you don't have to put a fake warning label on it.
Who won the week?
The LGBT community, not only did they win the week, they won the month. It's Pride Month, and with a big Supreme Court decision, they definitely won the week.
I'm going to say Satan won the week this week. For a long time, the National League has fought off the designated hitter, and finally, through COVID, we surrendered. The Devils worked on this a long time, and he won. And with that, we will see you in 2 weeks on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.